Hi, everybody. I thought I would do a little chat this morning about something I call the consciousness button. I just made that up. But nevertheless, I think we have a consciousness button. And I'll tell you what that is. Everything of value that I've learned from you, from doing readings, from my work as a medical intuitive, which took me on a path of 35 years of rich learning about how we work, how consciousness works, and that we really are on this path of, I don't like the word awakening. I wish I had a different word, but of constant learning, of constant awakening. I can't, I'll think of another word somewhere along the line, but for now, we'll use that. And it is a path of transforming, of going from one state of understanding something to the next, to the next. And I started that Phoenix series because I felt that these last decades have been laying the groundwork for a time of where the awakening we've been the awakening we've been going through would reach a point where it would activate radical change. And that moment has come. That time has come, or at least one phase of that has come, and it's happening actually faster than I anticipated. I mean, why would I know anything about? But it's happening. But it reminds me so much of what happens in us when we have to go through a time of radical change. And so, I mean, everything reminds me of the laws of the universe. What is in one is in the whole. And in this time of awakening, a new paradigm is actually like hidden behind the scenes and is working its way into our lives. And that new paradigm has a higher level of instruction. Like if you look at the laws you're learning about your health, for example, that you operate in a holistic paradigm, that all is one, that you have to treat your whole system as one, as a biospiritual ecological system, and that to operate outside that system is detrimental to your well-being. You're like a micro earth, and that your whole system breathes together. And that's the same principle that is now pulsating in the collective. And as using that principle as a guiding lens, you can see that principle is pulsating in what's happening in our world around us. And one of the things that's true is that if you operate outside that principle now, you throw yourself off balance. But it's very difficult to operate within that principle. And that's what inner growth is all about. And here comes the consciousness button. One of the, you may know that I wrote a book called Why People Don't Heal. And I had assumed quite naively years ago that everybody wanted to be healthy. Like, well, why wouldn't you want to be healthy? And when somebody would come to me for a reading and I would say, well, this is this, you have this. And this is what you can do to help yourself. Most people would say, oh, that's so much. I have to change this. I have to change that. And that's your consciousness button, where you become conscious of what you have to do. But it's harder. It's harder than being unconscious, where you realize, I shouldn't eat that. Now this is bad for me. Now that thought is bad for me. Now that attitude's bad. But you don't want to be that conscious. You want to be unconscious. You don't want to know that much. But it's too late. You've crossed the consciousness Rubicon. And it's just too late. And you wish you could hit the consciousness button. Like, that's as conscious as I want to be. I don't want to be that conscious. I liked it better when I was unconscious, when I didn't know. But it's too late. You've crossed that Rubicon. And the same thing applies to how intuitive you've become, where your intuition now alerts you to the truth that you can sense the vulnerabilities of other people, that the package they've come in, the way they look, is no longer the place where you stop. That in fact you sense their humanness, and that's what's important. You sense their soul. You have a soul sensory system, and it tells you, I'm one with that person. That person, what I do to one, I do to all. And you may say to yourself, I don't want to be that conscious. I like the other way better. It allows me to make certain decisions that separate us. But it's too late. We've crossed the holistic Rubicon. And it's a challenge to bring the rest of us with that. And I've seen it again and again and again with people who battle with their own health, who battle with what they have to do in their individual life to heal, where they have to battle with forgiveness, and they have to battle with what it is to cope with their rage, or to cope with their anger, or to cope with judgment. And they have to get over believing things that are simply not true, that cost them their power, and that they've reached a place where their attitudes about life are just too disempowering, and they have to change that, or they sacrifice their health. And they've just become too conscious. And so what was unconscious they have to release that part, because they know better. They know that when they get that intuitive signal that says, you got to walk, you have to haul that carcass of yours off the couch and move. And then they go through the usual, well, I'll do it tomorrow. And then they hear that voice that says, oh, this again? You're going to try and tell me again that you're going to negotiate when you know, in fact, you're just lying you're lying to me again. Just haul your carcass off the couch and move. You get to the point where you're too conscious, and you know you're lying to yourself. And then then the guilt starts, and you're just too conscious, and you want to hit that consciousness button. And you want to get away with the same lies you've told yourself before, but you can't. You're just too conscious. That's the place our society is now. We're just too conscious. And a lot of people are going to want to hit that consciousness button. And they're going to want to say, no. And believe me, this is where it's going to get a bit tumultuous out there. Because you know what it's like in yourself when you hit the consciousness button, when you know more than you want to know, and you want to go back to being unconscious. But you can't. You can only go forward. But in that place, it's a place of conflict, because becoming more conscious takes so much effort. It's so hard. It's so hard, but you can't go backwards. And you can't stay in this conflict. You can only go forward. I had a man in one of my workshops, one of the bravest men I've ever known. And he was in Ireland, and I was talking about forgiveness. And I'm sure many of you heard me tell this story, and how forgiveness is actually, it's the most illogical thing you'll ever do, because everything about forgiveness doesn't make any sense to the rational, logical mind, because you think you're telling someone what you did to me doesn't matter. And that's not what forgiveness is at all. Forgiveness is a mystical act, which is why it requires so much of you. It's where you defeat the power of logic and reason in you, which is tormenting. It's really tormenting. It's tormenting to constantly say, I just wish, I need to know. It's the power of vengeance in you. It's the power of hatred, really, that controls you, and the appetite to get even. And forgiveness is really the capacity to realize, I do not want this bitterness. I don't want to return this bitterness to anybody. I don't want to keep punishing people. I didn't realize I had this kind of capacity to hurt people in me. This is what I'm realizing about myself. This brought this out in me. This is what I need to let go of. That's what forgiveness is. That's why it's a mystical act of self-healing. Self-healing is, quite frankly, one of the most selfish things you can do for yourself. But he stood up and he said, that's it. He hit the consciousness button. He said, I don't want to hear anymore. I don't want to hear anymore. Because I am living with people that in order to survive, I need my anger. I need my anger because they don't understand any of this. And I can't keep being the most conscious person among them because it's killing me. And he started crying. And he said, I need my anger. And I know how destructive anger is now, but I don't know how to survive with them. But my anger is now killing me. It was the most painful thing. It was so painful to hear him talk because it was so honest and it was so laser sharp. He knew now how painful conscious anger was. But he also knew he was in that battleground where he knew that his acts of love were so huge, and he knew they didn't appreciate the pain of how much it cost him to love them so much. That was big. He left the room, but I knew he would ultimately choose to continue to be loving because it was too late. He had crossed that Rubicon. It could only go forward. All of us have that consciousness button, that place where we say, I don't want to be any more conscious. I don't. And it is so painful. But that's what this moment's about. And it's so easy to look and choose to go backwards and say, oh, those rioters, oh, those this, oh, those that. But we have to look at the larger, which is, this is what the release of sorrow looks like. This is what the change in the world looks like. This is what that inner place of conflict looks like when we don't want so much of our world to change, but it's changing right in front of our eyes. It's changing right in front of our eyes. And it's very difficult to let what we love about it change. And yet there's so much about it that has to change. That was, excuse me, that served what was not good. So my encouragement to you is to remember that the template, the greater template that is at work is become whole. Become whole. It is pulsating in your body. It's pulsating in the health of everything. What is in one is in the whole. What we do to one, we do to all. That is like a homeopathic message. It's radiating everywhere. It's radiating everywhere. And if we have thoughts that do not support the whole, we are buying into illusions. So somehow we always have to get higher and higher and higher, as challenging as that may be. And this is where the power of the soul and prayer come in. I'll be moving into Phoenix 3 in the next couple of weeks, which is what it is to rely on the remarkable power of your inner nature to take you where your mind would have you not go. Where your mind would have you not go. Because we cling to reason, and we cling to logic. But the soul rises from the ashes. That's the majesty of that. That's the part of us that can heal the diseases that the mind can't. What I learned is that the mind can make you feel better, but the soul can heal. That's the difference. Healing is the province of the soul and the channel of grace. So I leave you with that because I believe we're just all on this remarkable historic journey together. And to these days, what we're witnessing is vertical time, immediacy, where all change is immediate and profound. And prayer. I just cannot emphasize the power of closing your eyes and saying, I could use some grace and I could use it now. So just download some grace. Okay. Thank you, everybody.